Hi everyone, Painthony Job Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it is time for a review of the new Taylor Swift record, Lover. This is the latest full-length LP from pop songstress Taylor Swift. It's her 7th album, and follows the incredibly moody and mostly awful Reputation, which dropped in 2017. This album was a dark and image-obsessed change of pace for Taylor, essentially her wearing her bad rep like an edgy badge of honor, but it mostly turned into a petty nightmare that even her most generous critics had a hard time defending. Thankfully, Lover seems to be Taylor's return to upbeat, bold, and bright pop. And, you know, where else would she go? After the incredible success of Red and, of course, 1989, after a record like 89, you are a pop artist for life. The chances of Taylor making that sudden pivot to French house or black and death metal, it's dwindled down to almost nothing. But even though Lover is yet another notch in Taylor's pop belt, it is much different stylistically from any pop record she has released so far. And I would imagine a great deal of that comes down to the inclusion of multi-instrumentalist and singer-songwriter of Bleachers fame, Jack Antonoff, coming into the fold here, having his hands in the production of nearly every track on this album. So Jack's, and I imagine Taylor's, love of groovy synth pop and peppy pop rock and grand indie anthems, it floods nearly every song on this record. Now, honestly, going into this record, I was not expecting all that much of Lover, mostly because I very much disliked the singles leading up to this album, with the exception of the title track. The song Me, featuring Brendan Urie, is a totally overblown, overproduced, just up in the clouds pop tune with some of Taylor's worst lyrics to date. I still cannot stand it. And I'm sorry, but the Humpty Dumpty bars on The Archer, no thank you. And the track You Need to Calm Down has been torn apart across the internet as being some very, very weak LGBT allyship. Not to mention it all happens over an instrumental that sounds like some gussied up and watered down LCD sound system. But again, the title track is actually a pretty great song, an elegantly arranged acoustic ballad with a subtle country twang to it. I love the progressively lush instrumentation, the intimate lyrics. But despite not expecting much of Lover on the whole, I actually ended up enjoying the album a little bit because the deep cuts are quite good. Yes, they are. Taylor does drum up quite a few highlights across these 18 songs. Despite finding the message of the song funny because nothing says "I've forgotten about you" than a song about you, the opening track, I Forgot That You Existed, is actually pretty good. I love the playful piano chords, I love the pumping beats, I love Taylor's very expressive voice on this track. It feels like a pop take on a musical portion of a high school play. And let's face it, that's because Taylor, forgetting about her haters and not keeping a tally of every time she's been crossed, that's an act. However, it's one I am willing to suspend disbelief for if the song is this sweet. I think the track boils down the attitude of the overall album pretty nicely because it is a very positive, euphoric, lovey-dovey kind of record. To get to that point, Taylor needs to shake off the hate. And that's how we arrive at the track Cruel Summer, which is one of a few tracks on this album that presents us with this very triumphant synth pop that's kind of an 80s throwback, but it's mostly a result of modern production aesthetics. It's got a powerful chorus that I love quite a bit, but it also rides a little on the coattails of what Carly Rae Jepsen has been doing on her past couple of albums. I feel roughly the same way about the instrumental on The Archer, also the track The Man, though this track, I will say, does stand on the merits of its own melodies, its concept, where Taylor essentially imagines herself as a man and posing that her public image would be softened or not as controversial, or the things that people dislike about her would be reasoned away if she were just male. Which is absolutely reductive, though I do not deny that Taylor has faced sexism in the music industry. That is like going outside and facing the sun. But to imply that Taylor's womanhood throughout her career has not also been a source of empowerment and artistic inspiration would be a lie. The super lovesick and catchy pop anthems continue onto the songs I Think He Knows, also Cornelia Street, and a song that I love, Paper Rings, which may actually be my favorite Taylor Swift song ever. It is a somewhat rowdy piece of pop rock with some subtly punky guitar embellishments here and there in the verse, in the intro, but really it's all about how the chorus blossoms into this sparkling, euphoric, amazing, wall of sound. It reminds me of classic 80s pop hits like the Go-Go's Vacation, or maybe even a little 99 Red Balloons. There are a few head scratchers in the second leg of this album though, like with Miss Americana and The Heartbreak Prince. This song sounds like Taylor's best attempt at doing a Lana Del Rey ripoff. It's like she wants to perform the act, but she can only go so far with it. The moany and breathy singing is there at a few points, but the atmosphere, the space, the drama is missing. With only a few duds, the first 2/3 of Lover are actually pretty great, but it's the last leg of the album where things begin to get spotty. You have redundancies like the track London Boy, where the glitzy, uplifting pop instrumentation and crush-centric lyrics, it's like I'm just getting another taste of this one more time, but now it's with a side of tea and crumpets. Soon You'll Get Better was an exciting prospect for the record though, going into it, because it features none other than the Dixie Chicks, who were essentially blackballed out of the country industry a long time ago for saying the truth that George Bush was a garbage president. It's interesting that Taylor kind of loops back around, gives them that cosign, lets them on a track because she was once a part of the section of the music industry they were booted from. And the Chicks' contributions to this track are actually quite nice. The lovely vocal harmonies, the fiddle, the plucky acoustics. But what stuns ultimately about this track are Taylor's lyrics on the song, which are in tribute to her mother battling cancer. She doesn't give a whole lot in terms of personal details on this struggle that her and her mother, her family are going through, and I understand that, but she does, in a very relatable way, go over the extreme uncertainty and the fear of losing someone so important to her. The track False God sort of succeeds where the song The Archer miserably failed, in that it's trying to create a somewhat spacey, linear, synth-backed meditation of a song. This one featuring a bit of saxophone, that's quite tasteful. Really what ruins the track for me is that it fails to stick the landing on the very fizzled out ending. After this point though is when things really begin to go downhill. We have the track Afterglow, which stylistically is everything we have heard up until this point to some degree or another, but now it's attached to a much less memorable song. The track It's Nice to Have a Friend is a total throwaway. At best, it is a song that should have been on a bonus deluxe version of the album as an extra track. An example of one of a few songs here that could have been cut from the record entirely, especially given that the instrumental sounds unfinished. This is like a rough idea for a song you would bring to the studio to retool into something bigger. Then there's the barely passable closer, which should have been a much bigger and a more exciting finish, but it wasn't. I will say Lover certainly exceeded my expectations, and I think there are more enjoyable tracks than there are bad ones here. But this album really is its own worst enemy, because if you expelled the worst and most underwhelming songs on this entire album, you would potentially have Taylor's best record to date. But as it currently stands, Lover is a powerful and a righteous feminite that is wearing a way too bulky suit of armor that prevents her from moving as gracefully as she could. I'm feeling a light 6 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video for you to check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Taylor Swift, Lover of Forever.